Welcome to the session, Sustainability, Getting Back on the Road Smarter. While COVID-19 has had devastating impact on lives and businesses, reductions in travel in the past year have had a positive impact on the environment. Before business travel resumes, travel buyers who hadn't previously joined efforts toward achieving sustainability goals have an opportunity to take meaningful sustainability actions and align with their organization's sustainability efforts. This session will focus on providing an understanding of which data are most relevant and how travel managers can report on them accurately and take other actions to help their companies and their travelers make decisions that will reduce carbon emissions. Here to share their insight and experience, we're lucky to have with us today Jihan Koliander, Global Travel Director for Boston Consulting Group, Toby Withnell, Director, Global Travel Services for ARM, and Mark Corbett, founder of Thrust Carbon, winner of the BTN Business Travel Innovator Award at our 2020 Innovate program. Thank you all for being here today. So let's start alphabetically by company with you, Toby. And can you please tell us what you've done or are doing to increase the sustainability of your travel program before travelers return to the road?
Okay, thanks, David. Just a quick update on sort of ARM's sustainability position. In that it considers obviously environmental management to be a key part of good business practice. And it's committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2023 and net zero carbon by 2029, in line with the Paris Agreement. So this commitment means we will take a science-based approach to cut absolute emissions from our business operations globally by at least 42%. In order to start delivering on these targets, we have set individual absolute carbon reduction targets across key impact areas to deliver this ambition, from energy usage to travel. With travel accounting for approximately 50% of all CO2 arising from the business, this is obviously a key focus area. So at the end of 2019, we started to develop a sustainable travel policy focusing on a reduction of 40% of CO2 and started engaging the business to update them on ARM's sustainable agenda, as well as obviously proposing carbon travel budgets for each of the departments across ARM. So based on their feedback and discussions, a new sustainable travel program policy was developed and carbon budgets targets set for the business for 2020. And then we had COVID. So that made things very easy for us. But that has also accelerated our drive to sustainability for two key reasons. One, travelers over the course of the year are now much more aware as to what meetings can be now done virtually, as opposed to those that require face-to-face interaction. And secondly, travelers, I think, are now much more aware and sensitive for the need of a sustainable business and the impact that flying in particular has on the environment. Thank you.
Great. So as you alluded to, Toby, to address sustainability issues, your company had to measure your carbon emissions and then figure out how to reduce them. So from your seat in the global travel services area, how were you able to contribute to your company's efforts to measure and reduce those emissions?
It's probably easier if I just go into a bit more detail about how we set these carbon budgets. So we calculated the total net zero carbon target reduction required that we need to achieve in 2029 across the business. And then we've worked out an absolute reduction in travel CO2 required to hit that target. And then based on FY19, where the travel profile was relatively normal, we set an annual target going forward for reducing absolute carbon emissions, also factoring in headcount growth on an annual basis. So it's a realistic sort of growth path. So a key part has been setting the calculation and setting of annual carbon targets for each department. So what we've done is detailed trip projections have been calculated, linked to the individual department carbon targets, as it's difficult, obviously, for travelers to relate trips with CO2 emissions. But this is obviously a rough guide because travel profiles, patterns change in the future. One key initiative we've done is actually aligning the carbon budgets with the T&E cost budgets for the overall company departments to help promote the net zero agenda, because it doesn't make sense really to have a carbon budget that does not directly relate to a T&E budget. And then also we'll be sending out travel CO2 dashboards to the business departments on a monthly basis to enable them to monitor their carbon emissions and ensure they are on track to meet the annual target. And that's it.
So what are the tools that you've been using to make those measurements and to communicate them?
We've developed a formula that calculates the CO2 targets by department, which we can then obviously project on a monthly basis. So we, and obviously the key stakeholders and departments can keep track on the annual targets. And this will also enable us to monitor performance and make any necessary adjustments along the way. And then the CO2 reporting is via CWT Analytics, and we use Ecometrica, which is the environmental accounting and sustainability management tool for all our reporting.
So how do you provide travelers with support to make so that they can make smarter choices when they get back onto the road?
So obviously things are relatively quiet at the moment, but the travel intranet site has been redesigned. So with a big focus on sustainable travel. Obviously highlighting carbon targets, league table for CO2 emissions we'll be putting on there to keep people updated as to how they're doing across the company. And also a lot more information on sustainable choices, airlines, hotels, rail, and ground transportation, travel suppliers. So there's a lot of information on there. In Q2, we'll be running sort of workshops and comms to announce the return to travel, which hopefully will be quite soon in some of the countries with the way things are going, and also presenting the new travel and virtual meeting policy and program. We're also setting up an online pre-trip approval process, and that built into that will have a carbon calculator. So travelers start getting used to calculating the CO2 for each trip and get a sense as to what carbon emissions, because it's sometimes difficult to relate that to actual trips, and make them more aware as to what the emissions are when they're booking trips. And obviously continuing to develop the virtual meeting platform that people across the business are pretty used to now.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
That's okay.
Jihan, just like Toby, your company is focused on net zero, but my understanding is that you started your sustainability efforts at your global management consulting firm even earlier than Toby's company, reducing your 2019 emissions related to business travel by 9.5%, which sounds to me quite considerable. How were you able to do that?
So it's very similar. I think it's a very similar approach to Toby. It's a question around providing the relevant data on the basis of. So in BCG, let me start. In BCG, we started already, as you mentioned, in 2018, and of course the pandemic accelerated a little bit that journey. But so we've been already offsetting our emission. But in addition, we were committed to a 30% reduction in Scope 3. Business travel emission per FTE by 2025. Similar to Toby, we have incorporated also firm growth into that discussion. We've looked into even removing the remaining footprint with the most effective nature-based engineering solution at an annual average price of almost $80 per ton by 2030. And beyond 2030, we will become, our target is to become climate positive by removing even more carbon than what we emit. The methodology is very similar, right? You have to address your baseline when it comes to your emissions. So again, the discussion around data accuracy to ensure that you have the capability to slice and dice data on that basis. Discussion is with leadership as to where we can meaningfully then reduce our emission, in which areas, communications from leadership, but also ensuring in parallel to that you are providing the relevant information to the traveler. So the tools that are out there, we have a global travel portal within BCG. It's a BCG portal that is, we call it single sign-on base. You're seeing what you need to see that is more relevant to your point of travel. And on that basis, we're able also to tailor make a lot of information for that individual on the basis maybe of the top destination that they fly to, the top suppliers that they use, etc. And the target for us is to ensure going forward that you are also not only when you are booking, which you're able to access through that portal, that you're seeing the various emission levels of your choices, but also that you are also able to see in total where you are in relation to your cohort, or in relation to your geography, or in relation to the firm target overall.
Fantastic. So my understanding is that net zero means attempting to remove 1 metric ton of CO2 from the atmosphere for every metric ton emitted. And that you've been doing that by planting trees and also making investments in nascent technologies for sequestration of carbon into soil and oceans. Obviously, your goals are quite aggressive. And to do that, you're going to need to do a lot more than you did last year. So what are you doing going forward in order to achieve those goals?
So we're actually rethinking our business model and our operating model in general when it comes to one, our client activities, and then two, to our internal travel. So you are looking at different archetypes, I would call, of travel that you are going to put at the hands of the various entities within the firm. And the usage of those archetypes will enable you to further reduce your emission and achieve those super aggressive targets. So we're going beyond, I would say, the normal discussion about offsetting. We're going further into changing the way we're operating to ensure that this is efficient. And it could be as a simple example to that, it could be the way you are staffing different cases. You start actually categorizing the type of cases that you're having and your staffing model by case, which enables then the firm as a whole to basically adapt to those predefined model of traveling in the future, which is actually in a consultancy environment, it sounds easy, but it is super complex to be able to do.
And so that's demand management, but it's also looking at alternatives to air travel, correct?
Yeah, so it's actually beyond the demand management. It is actually, you are structuring a different model for people to be traveling that is going to be adapted by type of activities that you are doing. And it's almost like you're switching it on. I am traveling for this purpose. That means that the model states that I should be doing A, B, C, D, and then you're adapting then your offer on that basis and your whole structure, as well as your reporting on that basis. So you're able to also report on a case specific as well. You go to that level of detail.
Right. So then what's the importance and the means of getting information into travelers' hands so that they make the right decisions?
It is super important so you can talk in general, you can talk about targets, etc. You can talk about directions that the firm is going to make, but ultimately there are still choices that are being made by the individual at the end of the day. And providing the relevant information to individual to make those informed decisions, at least, is super critical for the success of this journey. I think we were discussing earlier the fact that we're being helped in general, not only in BCG, but throughout the world, that there is a generation now, a younger generation that is far much more, I would say, aware of the impact of climate on the planet, on our everyday life, etc. So it is a little bit easier to engage with them as well, and to ensure that they understand the implication of the choices that they are making. So it's at point of booking is important. Providing dashboarding on where you are is important, and there are people who will be going maybe beyond and try to provide incentives for the ones who would like to go even above and beyond that.
So having the right data is key to corporate and traveler decision making. And I think before in the general session you were talking about, being the single source of truth on the travel data. So what's your involvement been in working with the travel data and then working with the company sustainability efforts to make sure that you're providing exactly what is needed?
So indeed, I mean, if you're deciding on going on a mission that is as ambitious as we are in BCG, then you have to make sure that the data that you're having is super accurate, that you are able to interpret it in the right way, that you're able to allocate it to the right functions or individuals, and you're doing all of that while you are ensuring GDPR and integrity of the individual's data, which is basically creating hierarchies in the accessibility of data as well. We are, as I've mentioned before, from our side, we are not sustainability experts, and we've been learning throughout this journey what it entails when it comes to sustainability in travel and what are the various factors that are being used out there outside in the market. Which is, by the way, that's another problem. There's far too many. You don't have any standard approach to it. But you're agreeing in general on the application of those various factors in your data. So we collaborate extremely closely with the sustainability team. We actually, throughout this past year, we've accelerated further that level of collaboration. So not only feeding the information that they require from us on a regular basis, but also ensuring that in the background that we are providing the up-to-date most information, because in travel, everything is super dynamic. I mean, you are booking a ticket and then you are going to change it, or you're booking a ticket and you're going to refund it. And the dynamic aspect is super complex, which means that on a monthly basis, you have to ensure that you have the top-to-date information that you are feeding to them, and ensure that you're answering the relevant questions that they have on their side, because they are not travel experts. So they will have tremendous amount of questions to ask you as to what does that mean in this particular data point, and have we interpreted it right or not, which is super critical, having that open dialogue between the two functions.
Absolutely. So which tools do you use to advance the data collection and processing effort?
So we are, in terms of, so we have the global travel portal that I talked about, which is built by our team internally for BCG. It's basically a one-stop shop for everything that is travel related. You have information that is about our suppliers. You're able to rate our suppliers. You have information about your own policy. That is, you only see your own policy, and you have the ability to book. It takes you on a single sign-on base to KDS, which is the KDS Neo, which is the tool that we have launched all over Europe in BCG, and we're in the process of launching it as we speak in Asia and in the US. So on that tool, you're able to see your, the impact of your choices in terms of emission, and you're able to see your upcoming trips, etc. In parallel to that, there is a dashboard that is created in Tableau, Alteryx, which basically provides information by traveler, by function, by cohort, by geography, to the leadership of the firm. And the hierarchy of that is access to the relevant people to be able to see where we are in general when it comes to emission, who is sticking out a bit more than others. Digging into the details of that, you will be able to see why you're seeing the figures that you're seeing, and then you can start addressing the way forward to ensure that we're not above where we need to be in terms of target.
So my understanding is you use KDS to deliver some information. What do they provide?
So KDS basically gives you the upfront information. They give you reports as well, but the impact of KDS is that they give you an upfront information as to what your choice will result in emission. So you really think twice before maybe picking one option versus another. KDS also allows you to set up your content on the basis of your policy or your sustainability policy. For example, pushing train as your alternative versus rail, or looking at options that are direct, which is far much more greener than going through a transfer flight. All those settings that you are creating, that is something that our team is creating in the background in collaboration with KDS, ensures that you as an individual, you already have I would say the baseline for you for hopefully to make the right choices, and beyond that you can even improve by picking an even lower emitting option.
Excellent. So before I mentioned that Thrust Carbon was our innovation face-off winner this year, and Thrust Carbon's got a platform that includes several tools centered around the Thrust Calculator, which crunches complex data to measure emissions for travel and other business activities. It presents emissions information via customizable reports and suggests offset opportunities to mitigate climate impact. So Mark, what is it that prompted you to develop Thrust Carbon?
Right. Well, thank you so much, David. And first and foremost, it's because we're in a climate emergency, right? We need swift solutions that are accurate, powerful, easy to use, and can empower people like yourselves, the travel managers who are watching here today. And I love all the comments that have come out so far, especially around kind of like data and integrity, and then driving better decision making. So at our core, that's absolutely what we do. We're designed entirely to make travel effortlessly green, because if this is complicated, if it's too expensive, like we're just not going to be able to do it. So pulling up some of the points there around what we can do with data, right? Some of the people in the space are still using lots of kind of averages on emissions data. If you're doing that, then it's incredibly difficult to make kind of really smart decisions about the future of your travel. If you talk about reducing your travel budget or your carbon emissions budget by 10%, as an example, with one of our clients, we can save them 10% of emissions every single year by just changing their business travel policy to only business travel on red-eye flights. That's one single change that has come out of their specific data. For another client, by halving kind of repeat city visits, their emissions figure drops by a third already. So these are the kind of insights that we're able to provide with our calculator, with this kind of total open transparency behind all our data as well. Because as the others have kind of alluded to, there's lots of opaqueness in the space. Like it's hard to understand what the data means, where it's coming from. With every report that we kind of publish as part of our calculator, and as totally unlimited reports, all of that will generate that information necessary for you to drive those better decisions. And I think one of the points that comes up from the clients that we speak to over and over again, be it large enterprises or kind of TMCs at various levels, like you wouldn't be satisfied with only understanding the average cost of travel. So like, why would we even talk about average or sporadic emissions numbers? So this is one of the big changes we're seeing in the space. What drove me to building this in the first place was just understanding that I didn't know the data. Couldn't wrap my head around it. So if I was struggling with it, there must be a more simple way of doing it. And that's why we kind of built technology-driven solutions first and foremost. And everything we do is just technology fueled and designed to be as easy and engaging to use as possible for all the travelers in the ecosystem.
So what's the standard way that you measure emissions? I mean, like you say, that's the problem, is that we need to get to standards. So what's your standard, and is that customizable to an individual corporation?
So we predominantly focus on kind of information from DEFRA, which is the UK's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, who are kind of the world leaders in this. We also then supplement it with data from the ICAO, International kind of Civil Aviation Organization, UN, EPA, like all those kind of places, right? And then, our data is not customizable because we don't think it's kind of up for debate how you look at emissions. Like we trust all the experts out there. We then supplement it with our own research. There are some companies who feel incentivized or encouraged not to include elements like radiative forcing. That is, for anyone who hasn't come across this term, it's kind of like a compound effect of releasing greenhouse gases at the altitude of airplanes. It's about double the impact. So if you're ignoring that, then you will have half the emissions figure, and therefore it will seem like you are having less of an impact on the environment. And as the sustainability experts in this space, you know, our clients come to us to explain these numbers, to explain what's going on, to understand that rationale. And that's again why in every report any of our clients ever download, our methodology is written in black and white, so it can be understood and easily communicated with, you know, everyone from your company leadership down to every single customer or traveler.
Excellent. And how many corporate and other customers do you currently have?
So we got a good range of Fortune 500 companies, pretty much all under NDA, and looking forward to kind of making some really big announcements, especially when travel is kind of back and booming. You know, now is a very, very difficult time. It's not necessarily the time to make grandiose statements. And also it's difficult to kind of test this stuff under 2020 and 2021 rules. Previously, again, by having specific data, we've been able to show some of our clients how they can reduce their emissions by up to 20% purely by optimizing flight routes. So that's the exact same travel plan you have now, the exact same number of travelers, same flights, just different routes, and 20% change in emissions. So there's so much we can do with this data. And then again, for TMCs, it's about how do you put really affordable, accurate, easy to use data in your hands so that you can share it with your clients, from being on the telephone through to your whatever systems it is that you're using.
So in addition to optimizing their travel patterns, a lot of what you do at Thrust Carbon is suggesting offset opportunities. So can you tell us about some of the various offset opportunities that you suggest for mitigating climate impact?
Yeah, great question. So we basically go, first and foremost, we've got to figure out what's going on. So our calculator is just like our entry level, really easy to use product that you can understand what's going on and dive into that. Then we can start integrating it into your wider systems. Then we offer a kind of a out of the box dashboard so that you can look at your emissions for the entire company, you know, see how you represent against your peers. You know, Jihan was talking about that competitive analysis. Some people like that. For some people, it's just about that visibility piece. Mm-hmm. We have an amazing partnership with Shep, who are also BTN winners from the, or have also been kind of a big part of the BTN program. And that drives the point of booking nudges so that we can drive behavior. So everything is about reducing that impact once we've analyzed it. And then what you can't reduce, let's offset, right? And then offsetting is you know, people worry about greenwashing and people are really afraid of making mistakes. Come to us so you don't make mistakes, right? It's a convoluted industry that people don't understand that much. I'll put a question out for the audience, because I know people are chatting away at the moment. Does anyone want to guess how much it would cost to offset the entirety of global aviation, of commercial global aviation in 2019? Put some guesses down there, and I'll figure out a prize for anyone, and I'll circle back to it so I answer it in the question. So then within what we're doing, we make offsetting then really engaging. So if it's you as a business, if it's you as an individual traveler, how do you find programs that relate to where you've been, where you're going, that are matching in kind of price to what you're purchasing, especially on the customer side of things. And then you've got to know the difference between, you know, tree planting versus kind of emissions avoided. Right now, you know, the average tree sequesters 21 kilograms of carbon per year. That's not a lot. And also it takes an oak tree 100 years to get to maturity when they can actually start having a really positive impact. So planting trees is brilliant and it's a huge part of progress, but it takes time, right? But equally, I'm conscious I talked about being in a climate emergency. There's lots of good news out there. You might not know that in the US, there's enough space across the entire country to plant enough trees to offset the entirety of the agricultural industry, which is 10% of the US's entire emissions output per year, right? 540 megatons of emissions. So there is so much amazing work we can do in the world of offsetting, but the entire space needs to grow. We need pressure from airlines, we need pressure from corporates, so they are purchasing these on scale, en masse. So there is greater supply, greater demand, because the market isn't big enough yet.
Yeah, I mean, some people look at offsets as kind of like buying indulgences to make up for your sins, which allows you to keep sinning. But you know, clearly we've got two buyers here with Jihan and Toby who are seeing beyond that and moving toward net zero. So is do you have a plan to make net zero recommendations with Thrust Carbon, or is that something you're already working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as we have kind of the travel data and we can use our calculator to figure out what's going on, we can map your science-based targets against specific policy changes. So it might be, decreasing the total volume of flights by a certain percentage every year. It might be the reduction from business to premium to economy. I'm focused on, as I said earlier, one client going from multiple city visits in the same year to halving that number, really focus specific changes. And then, of course, we can map out your total emissions as business as usual over the next year, and then compare that to if you hit net zero. So we have clients who are looking at saving or specifically avoiding emitting, 500,000 tons over the next 10 years. So this is astronomical progress that we can make. And funnily enough, we're so grateful to be a part of this BTN network. We really, really appreciate kind of being on the BTN Hot List Award this year. And one of the things we'd like to offer to anyone today, if you're interested, we'll happily do like 3 months of analysis of your kind of travel routes, and we'll give you some top line travel policy suggestions just for free, just as a thank you for being part of this really awesome community. So please do reach out.
Terrific. Thanks so much. And we'll have to come back to the chat a little later on and see what we can do as far as getting the answer from you to your question.
I can answer it at the end.
So I've got several questions for the group and not much time to get their answers, but we also want to invite you to use the questions tab, and I'd be glad to ask your questions in addition to or instead of the ones I've got prepared. And I see one here from one of our attendees asked, are there any tools you really wish you had right now to help you achieve your company sustainability targets? And maybe we can marry that with one that I asked the panel to think about in advance, which was what's on the top of your wish list of the data you don't currently have for advancing your sustainability efforts. So Jihan, is there a tool and is there data that you can talk to?
Yes, so my wish, and it is not particularly related to our effort in BCG, but my wish more general is for us to enable to achieve scale is standardizing the methodology of calculating the CO2 emission, for example, of aircraft fuel. Today we're seeing some various sources, right? I think it was mentioned by Mark. You're using DEFRA. We are using DEFRA as well in BCG. There is ADEME, there is the International Civil Aviation Organization as a tool where you can also get calculation on your target emission. This is just to name a few. There are also different data points provided by each airline, which is making this very, very confusing. So not agreeing on a standard methodology for the industry, and what we're doing now is that you opt to use the methodology that is maybe used by a majority. Not having that one methodology may slow down a bit the mission that we're trying to achieve to provide a unified baseline. Ultimately, what I would like to see going forward in the future is a full integration of the pre-trip with the post-trip in one place of data. Now you will have to have them in different places, and to ensure that if you're going on the website of an airline and you would like to check how much emission this route is providing, that you have the exact same emission number that you will be seeing either in your own corporation or elsewhere, and that is not the case today.
Yes, indeed. That would be a beautiful thing if we could get some kind of standardization there. And Mark, what about you? Is there a tool? Well, obviously you're working on the tool, but is there data that you wish you had that you don't have today? That we don't.
Yes, I mean, on the tool front, I can cross my fingers and hope maybe we'll be the standardization for calculations. I don't know. I have no idea how we get there. It's a lot of pressure from governments and the industry. But for now, and I welcome as many competitors as we can do, because the more competitors we have, then you just run them against each other. And if they're not all producing the same number within a 0.01% difference, then someone's really off. So that's good for the industry. That's good for the industry. And in terms of specific data, I'd like to see more hotel data. that would be really great. A lot of people don't realize that it's almost as much as kind of 50% of emissions from hotels are from buffets. Maybe COVID will have killed the buffet. I don't know.
I think so. And actually, there's a related question there, and that is, how do you recommend prioritizing hotel sustainability to compare suppliers when there isn't a global measure, and also allowing for regional limitations? So, do you have something you can add to that, Mark?
Funnily enough, we've just joined the Plug and Play kind of a business accelerator as an opportunity to partner with some of the kind of globally leading hotel chains, so that we can actually work with them on some pilot programs to better measure and get better data. At the moment, so much of hotels is reliant on averages, and by comparison to airlines, where we have everything from load factor to specific flights and so much more detail. So we will get there.
And Toby or Jahan, do either of you have anything that you would add to this wish list of getting some hotel sustainability information?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of data in terms of sustainability and carbon emissions from airlines, but the weak spot is, as we've discussed, is hotels. I think there needs to be some sort of standardization there. Because it's an area that well, I think it's obviously going to take some time, because it's pretty complex. But I think it's really key, because if we're looking at sustainability across travel, it's not just airlines. It's hotels, it's car rental, etc.
Jihan, have you put some efforts into looking at
Yes, so I agree with the gentleman on that, absolutely. I think what we did is that we said, let's start somewhere a little bit on the hotel, and we started through our RFP process. And in addition to that, there are specific auditing questions that are pertaining to the sustainability program of the hotels, everything that is pertaining to the water, electricity, whatever supplier chain that they are deploying, detailed questions that will allow us, in addition to a third-party auditing capabilities, so that that those properties are actually audited by third party, which is very important for us, because there is no way for us to figure out, even if you are, with respect, striving to achieve specific targets, if there are no third-party auditor, then we do not know how far you got into that journey. So it is a parameter for us that there is a third-party auditor on the activities of those hotels. In addition to that, just a few months ago, actually, as part, we're using this downtime, we started also highlighting green hotels in our global travel portal. So it means that if you are a traveler, you're seeing different choices. Of course, you cannot be only in green hotels everywhere. I mean, there are limitations geographically where you need to be. But if you would like to, and you have the choice to be in a location that is close by, and there is a green hotel, then you're pushing a little bit more for that. So we're adopting the same approach as with the airlines.
Excellent. Toby, a question following up on, I guess you're mentioning about employees identifying meetings that can happen online. How are your employees doing that? How are you helping your employees do that? And what aspects are they considering in order to make that choice?
I mean, obviously people are used to using virtual meetings, but what we're trying to do is integrate it into the travel booking process in terms of the policy. So we'll have a sort of combined, it'll be sort of travel, sustainable travel policy and virtual meeting policy. So that's the plan to go. And what we're trying to do is set up a sort of one-stop shop. So any of the meeting platforms will go through there. The availability to book meeting rooms on that platform, and any other sort of additional services. So what we're trying to make it easy once travel does start to have an option, or much quicker, easier option in terms of booking virtual meetings. Because I think once travel starts, obviously people are going to start traveling again. So we just need to make sure that it's balanced in terms of having a much easier process in terms of doing, or even a hybrid. So you have hybrid virtual meetings in certain destinations and other people coming together in other destinations. So that's the plan.
So is it fair to say, ask one attendee, that we have a once in a generation chance to affect significant change with respect to sustainability? As travel returns, it'll be in a controlled manner and sustainability goals can be factored in. For many, under normal circumstances, it would have been a challenge. So I guess this is something that you kind of had addressed previously, Mark, that we have an existential crisis here.
Yeah.
How would you respond?
I think some other stats that are sometimes glossed over: every single ton of emissions damage done to our environment actually costs, in real terms, 160 euros. And that's from the government, from Germany. So, you know, when you can offset that for a global average of $2, it seems astronomical that we're missing that opportunity. You know, we know how many people are potentially being forced into extreme poverty. We know how this is affecting disproportionate elements of the world. You know, we're not going to get a second chance at this. However, the joy is there is so much technological innovation happening right now. You know, we're at the forefront of driving the behavioral change, but then on the other side, we've got the emergence of SAFs, so sustainable aviation fuels, which can rapidly cut emissions from airlines. We're looking at carbon capture, which literally, you know, is capturing carbon at the point of emissions and kind of storing it, and then in other cases, utilizing it for other energy means. You know, there is so much potential, but it needs investment. It needs people to lead. It needs companies to take ownership of their impact, right? And really start working towards our future.
Toby, are there specific projects your company supports involving planting trees or investing in technologies for sequestration of carbon into soil and oceans, or other means of removing or offsetting carbon emissions of which you're particularly proud?
Yeah, the ARM sort of focuses on carbon reduction as opposed to carbon sequestration at the moment. And we feel that's the right priority at the moment. I mean, investments in carbon sequestration will be part of the longer term plan to meet our net zero carbon by 2029. I suppose one interesting example of ARM technology being used at the moment to tackle climate change is a company called Hypergiant, who have launched the EOS bioreactor, which sounds a bit interesting, but the EOS uses AI technology to create ideal conditions for algae, which sounds strange, I know, in the reactor, and that allows them to convert CO2 into oxygen, and it captures approximately more CO2 than 400 trees. So a lot of the ARM software developments and technology are looking at areas like this to help on the sustainability side. And then we also have a long-term conservation partnership with the charity Fauna and Flora, which we've been supporting the technology of conservation work for quite a few years now. So it's sort of, obviously the important thing is obviously the reductions in business, but also in terms of what ARM are doing on the technology side, and that's right across the globe.
We're almost out of time here. One attendee asked, how do you track CO2 emissions in real time? Mark,
I mean,
do you want to answer that?
yeah, I mean, if I can take that, the answer for us, it's technology. You need the accurate calculator, and then you need a live integration into anything from your expense feed and to any other data points.
Jihan, before we go, what advice would you give to travel buyers who are just starting to look at how they can provide meaningful assistance to companies in providing data and other support for sustainability efforts?
I would tell them to be ready with their data, to ensure that they have the highest integrity in their data, to be the experts when it comes to the interpretation of data, and to engage with either third party if they do not have their own sustainability teams in-house, to ensure that they understand the various variables that impact the conversion of that data into emission in general.
Less than a minute left, Mark. Anything to add? Mark? Nope, he's frozen.
He's frozen.
Toby, anything to add?
Nope, not at this stage.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but before I release you for the half-hour networking break that will precede 3 fantastic 15-minute buyer presentations, please give a thunderous round of virtual applause to our fabulous speakers, Jihan, Toby, and Mark. It's a shame that we lost Mark because we we can't get his answer on the question he posed. But we thank you all for your attention and participation, and we'll try to circle back with you regarding that question. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.